friends, it's Tori. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about my problem with mood reading. So recently I put out a video about my 5-star reading slump, which essentially just means that I've been really craving a reader experience that doesn't hit me in the intellectual thinks so much as the emotional feels. And I want to have a 5-star read that just sweeps me away, that is totally immersive and engages me as a reader as much or more than my brain is engaged as an author, which is how I think I've been leaning in a lot of my 5-star reads lately. So what I did to facilitate this is I decided to mood read. I decided to drop the TBR. I decided to be completely spontaneous. And of course, when I put out my video about this, there were a lot of people that had a lot of thoughts about why I'm in this reading slump, that my TBR and restrictions and organization might be a little bit too much, which to that I always say it really depends on the reader. I find it helpful oftentimes to have kind of a guideline of what I'm gonna read. And every once in a while, I want to throw it out the window, and we're throwing it out the window. That's what we're doing this month. And I knew that I couldn't trust myself. I knew that I needed some backup. I needed to call in the cavalry, if you will. So I reached out to two of my closest friends who are also big readers, Casey from Bookishly Bookish and Leah from the Instagram account Leah Reads Stuff. And they know me very well at this point. They know where I've been in my writing. We've had long conversations about the books that we're all reading and how we feel about them and where we're at. And I trust these ladies. I'm saying it now. We'll see if that trust proves to be challenged through the course of this video. But I'm really excited because what they did is each of them sent 3 prompts to my husband in a text that I do not know anything about. There are 6 prompts in this jar, 3 from each of them, Casey and Leah, and I have no idea what's on them. They gave me 3 prompts that can be vague enough to give me multiple choices, but it's completely spontaneous because I have no idea what they picked. So this is going to be really fun because it is going to give me a little bit of a initial direction to choose a book, and it's going to leave me, they're vague enough to give me multiple options. But I don't know who wrote the prompt, and I don't know what the prompts are. And instead of drawing them all at once at the beginning of this reading vlog, I'm only going to be drawing 1. So I can't draw the next prompt until I've finished my first book, because that way I'm not giving myself the chance to like plan everything out and get too organized. It's going to be way more spontaneous. I'm mildly terrified of what's in this jar, partially because I think Leah was doing her absolute best to be really nice to me and to give me some, you know, good options. I know that she has several books on my bookshelf that she really wants me to read. So does Casey. And I know that Casey's going to be causing some mischief. I can feel it. I can feel it through the glass in the jar that there is some mischief going on here, and it is definitely coming from Casey's direction. So we're going to be drawing our first prompt. It's not quite July yet. It doesn't matter because we're not on any kind of timeline for this video, and that makes me very excited. And I'm super nervous to see what these prompts are. You guys, I have no idea. Okay, so the only person that has seen these besides me, and obviously Casey and Leah, is Ben, because he wrote them all out. Okay. Read a book within an epic fantasy series you haven't continued on in 2+ years. Over 1 year if there aren't any you haven't touched in 2+ years. Oh my gosh. Now the question is, who gave me this prompt? I don't know. I feel like that could go either way. I think that's a Casey prompt. I think I'm gonna guess that it's a Casey prompt. I'm sure over the course of this video they're gonna be laughing at me because I might get these wrong, but I think that is a Casey prompt. We'll see. So, an epic fantasy series I haven't touched in 2 years. Well, I need to go back to my spreadsheet and figure out what I haven't read in 2+ years. Okay, you guys, so that was actually tougher than I thought it was going to be because I don't have a ton of series that I haven't gone back to in like 2+ years that I am still planning on continuing. So I have 3 options, and one of them I feel like is a little bit of a stretch, but we'll see what we think. The first one is Jane Lindskold's Wolf's Head, Wolf's Heart, which is book 2 in the Firekeeper saga. And I'm pretty sure that I read the first book way more than 2 years ago. That was probably closer to like a decade ago, if we're being honest. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a little bit hesitant to pick this one, just because I really want to go back to this series and I really want to see how I feel about the rest of it. But I do kind of feel like I need to reread the first one because, which, I mean, technically I could just reread the first one. That is a possibility. That is a thing that we could do. But Firekeeper Saga is option number 1. Number 2, this is a YA, technically speaking, but it is still like an epic fantasy world and series, and that is Sebastian de Castell's Spellslinger series. I read Spellslinger probably in like 2022 or 2023, I can't remember, and I own book 2. It's on my shelves, and it would be kind of nice to do a YA epic fantasy just because it'd be a little bit less of a chunk, especially where we're kicking off mood reading. So option B. Option 3, and I did check on this, I read Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier in January of 2024. And I never continued the series, which is ridiculous. And Juliette Marillier is an incredible author that I anticipate having more 5-star reads from. And book 2, another one that I do own on my shelves, is Son of the Shadows. This is book 2 in her Seven Waters series, and it is way past time that I continue this series. Now, I will say, I'm trying to figure out, from a mood reading perspective, which one of these options I feel like is hitting me the right way, in terms of mood, where I'm at. I think I would love to read Shadow Black from a just ease of reading standpoint. It'd be really nice to start out with something a little bit like lighter. And also, I really want to continue this series. It's one of the series that I've waited the longest to continue, but I do really feel like I'd need to read the first book, so I would be rereading, which technically it doesn't say that I can't reread on the prompt. It just says within a series I haven't touched in 2+ years, so this would still count. And I do really want to reread book 1. And also, I really want to read Juliette Marillier. This is why I need guidance, guys. For all of you guys in the comments that are like, I think you should throw out your TBR. You don't need all those rules and regulations. I'm like, you have no idea how much I need help choosing books sometimes. I think we're going to read Juliette Marillier. I'm just making the executive decision, even though I genuinely really want to read all 3 of these books. It has been too long since I read a Juliette Marillier, and I really want to continue this series. And even though this is going to be not as light of a read, I think I'm okay with that. I think I need something that just speaks to that reader experience, and I know Daughter of the Forest hit it out of the park for me, so I have high expectations of the rest of her writing. So our first book with our first prompt is going to be Son of the Shadows by Juliette Marillier. So I wanted to film this vlog clip outside, sitting under my tree. And this is just the luck that I have. I thought, it's 6 o'clock at night, I should be safe. So I went out, I put down my towel, and I sat down under my tree. My neighbor literally drove his lawnmower out of his shed and started mowing the minute I sat down. I finished Son of the Shadows. And there's a couple reasons why this is my first update of the vlog. First of all, I was so swept away by this book. I wanted nothing to come between me and my reading experience with these characters. I couldn't handle the idea of turning my camera on to talk about it. And it has been a week almost since I finished this book, and I'm just now sitting down to talk about it because I wasn't ready. I was just soaking in the experience and holding it to myself for just a little bit longer. I've been saying for the last few weeks that I was really feeling like I needed a reader experience book, a book that was going to push me out of my analytical brain and engage the emotional and just give me one of those incredible 5-star reader experiences. And honestly, I am not shocked that it was Juliette Marillier who gave me that. The prompt that I finished was that I had to read a book from an epic fantasy series that I hadn't touched in at least 2 years. And it is shameful that I have not read Daughter of the Forest since January of 2024, and I am just now picking up the sequel. Especially since Daughter of the Forest became one of my favorite fantasy books I've ever read, and Juliette Marillier is just an absolutely incredible author. There are parts of this book that my analytical brain twitched at. That aside, the characters, the immersion, the emotion that Juliette Marillier is able to conjure in her writing. You guys, this book took me on a whole journey. We were on an entire journey, and it's absolutely incredible. There are parts of it, decisions that the characters make that I do not love, but I love them. And here's the part. Okay, here's the part that really gets me. This is a romance. That's not the only thing it is, but it is a romance. And this is the kind of romance that I live for. The kind of romance where two people pull each other out of the hardships that they face in life, the trauma that they may have experienced. It's not pretty. There are some very ugly decisions made, very ugly words said in this novel between the main characters. They are not perfect people. And yet I am so invested in this story, the story of this family, the story of the main character, the story of the romance, and how heartbreaking it is and how powerful it is. This book is an enemies to lovers story that actually delivers what it promises. It has been a really long time since I outright had to blush and cover my face because I was loving a romance so much. And I cannot believe that I am admitting that on my channel. I feel like I have completely ruined my reputation by sharing that with you guys. I cried, I laughed, I mourned with these characters. I don't even know how to talk about this book, you guys. This is a continuation of Daughter of the Forest in the sense that we pick up with a next generation, if you will. This book is deeply rooted in Celtic folklore and myth and magic, and very nature-focused, very elemental. And if you were looking for a series that fit perfectly into the druid class of D&D characters, look no further. This is about the most druid book series I have ever read in fantasy. And part of that is because Juliette Marillier is actually a literal druid. I love these characters, you guys. They're so deeply flawed, and they're so deeply beautiful, and her writing, there's a lot of content in here that speaks directly to trauma healing and the depths to which we have to go, oftentimes of our own volition, and sometimes having someone else reach out a hand to pull us back out into reality from that trauma. And I love that Juliette Marillier does not shy away from the harshness of that and how it sometimes makes you a person that is difficult to be around, because that is a truism of trauma healing that I think she walks the balance so beautifully of showing that, but still making us desperately want the character to heal, to desperately see them be a better version of themselves, to receive the love that they are being offered. This is a beautiful book, and I'm still here mentally. I have moved on to my next prompt by the time you will see me talking about this book. and I'm still mentally here. I am still with these characters. I love them so much. This was a full 5-star read without any caveats, which is how I know that it was a reader experience, because there were a couple of content things in here that I didn't love, but I love this book so much, you guys, so much. What a way to kick off this project, and I'm so thankful that I decided to trust my gut and go back to Juliette Marillier, because that was the exact experience that I needed to renew my trust in a reader 5-star. And I talked about this a little bit in one of my previous videos. I'll try and remember to link it up here, where I talked about the difference between an analytical 5-star and a reader, like, emotional experience 5-star. And this is that reader experience 5-star, which is what I've been looking for all year. And I love it so much, and I'm so glad that I read this. Okay guys, it is time to pick our second prompt of this reading vlog, and I'm super excited. What an amazing way to start. I know you've already seen it. I haven't filmed my final thoughts on this because I just finished it this morning, and I'm just taking a little bit to percolate and kind of soak in the experience of reading this book and going back to Juliette Marillier, because man, I have missed her work so much. But we have finished our first book. This was a 5-star read, which is amazing. We started the vlog with a 5-star read, you guys. Like, that couldn't have gone better. So shout out to the prompt giver, who at this point, I want to say is Leah. I know I thought it was Casey when I first started, but I'm doubting myself. I think I'm not going to be able to guess for sure until I've seen all the prompts. And I think that's not going to happen until the end. So we have our prompt jar for prompt number 2. We're going to pull this one, which is read a book with an animal on the spine only. What? Okay. An animal on the spine only? Okay, well, let me cycle through my shelves and see what we can find. You guys, this is a horrible prompt. Because you'd think, like, oh, that has to be, you know, that you can find some books with animals only on the spine, not the rest of the cover, only the spine. Here's the problem with that. There are a lot of publishing houses that utilize animals in their trademark that's on the spine of the book, right? Great. The problem is trying to find one that doesn't also have that same trademark on the back of the book, because for a lot of them, it's in 2 places, and then it's not only on the spine. I don't have a single book anywhere in my library on these shelves that has an animal just on the spine, like the actual illustration, that isn't also on the cover. So it literally came down to the trademarks of the publishing companies. So I found 4 or 5, and the top 3 that I pulled to pick from were Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose, and this has a kangaroo on the spine that isn't on the back of the book. And there aren't birds flying around in the illustration either, which is great. The second one that I pulled was The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman and Other Stories, which has a bear from Arcturus on the spine, but not on the back. And the third option that I pulled is A Time for Swords by Matthew Harvey, which, to be fair, I've been meaning to read this for a really long time, so I'm not mad that this one came up, actually. And this one has a head of Zeus with an owl on the spine that isn't on the back, and there's birds, you guys. There are literally birds in the sky on the front cover, and I just noticed that. This is the one I was gonna pick. So another one that I'm going to add in now because that's gone. I'm going to make sure that there are no birds on the front cover this time. I don't see anything on the front or back cover. I can't read this one either, you guys. There's a crow on the spine only of Child of the Night Guild by Andy Peliquin, which is book 1 in his Queen of Thieves series. However, as I was just looking, down here in the illustration in the back, there's a little dog. The other one, we're really going down the list here, that I actually just picked up from a little free library is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, which is a literary fiction that I just felt like on a whim sounded interesting. I'd had it on my TBR for quite a while, and it has a penguin mark on the spine that isn't on the back or the front. No, it is on the front. Right, so my two options are Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose and Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Ugh, guys, that was a tough one to pull after Son of Shadows because I want to read this, but I am not in the mood for like a really in-depth military book right now. And I don't know that I'm in the mood for short stories either. So I'm gonna look on my upper shelves for my nonfiction and my classics, because I will choose one of these if I don't have anything else to choose from, but I'm just gonna I'm gonna do a Hail Mary on those top shelves and just kind of see if there's anything that can help me out here. Well guys, the Hail Mary didn't work. So it's between these two books, because these are literally the only two books that I haven't already read that have an animal symbol only on the spine, not on anywhere else on the book. Literally every other book I checked, every other one, this is it. So, let's see which one's shorter. Yellow Wallpaper is like 380 pages. So Band of Brothers is 307. However, the font in this is way smaller. So even though it's less page count, I don't know what to pick, guys. I genuinely don't know what to pick. I think we're gonna go with Band of Brothers. But that makes me kind of sad because I'm actually not excited about it, which is a big bummer, because on a general scale, I am excited about it, but like this one, wrong timing and frustration. So we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna read this, and that will be my pick for the prompt of an animal on the spine only. I'm being a grump about this. I might love it. I anticipate loving the book. I'm really hoping that I can like compartmentalize my lack of options frustration into actually enjoying this book, because this is something that I have really wanted to read for a long time. So it's not that I don't want to read the book, and I want to make that very clear, but Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose. Let's see how this goes, and I will be back with thoughts. All right, guys, so I am at a park with the kids, and I thought I would give you an update on Band of Brothers since I'm here and reading it. I'm about halfway through, and it is really, really good. It is excellent, but I think I'm realizing that I definitely have a preference for historical fiction more than historical nonfiction, just from a reading experience standpoint, because the sheer level of detail in this that you have to keep track of is just, it's a lot. It's a lot. And you know, for me, I care way more about the people and their individual stories than I do about how many clips of ammunition we went through and we moved 100 feet this way, and this is like, I like following along on the map. And I like but I like the stories of the soldiers more, and I feel like we're getting little bits and pieces of that in this, but not a ton. There's moments, but it's a lot of just pure detail. And I feel like this is one of those books that I'd rather see the TV series that was based on the book, because I think it's going to be easier to visualize, plus it's going to give me more of that character focus. That's where I'm at. I'm halfway through. It has taken me a little bit longer to read this, and I did decide to pick up another book or two while I'm reading this one, just because I needed a brain break, and this is a ton of detail, you guys. So I am halfway through, so we are getting there, and I am enjoying it, but it is definitely not as immersive of an experience as Son of the Shadows. Okay guys, I have officially finished Band of Brothers by Stephen E. Ambrose. Wowza. It has been, I think, 7 days, like a full 7 or 8 days since I first started reading this. First of all, the magnitude and just the incredible nature of this story and the men that are in it is one of those things that kind of defies review, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know that there's anything I could rate this other than a 5 and live with myself afterwards. It's incredible. The story of Easy Company and the men that fought in World War II in the Easy Company, I knew bits and pieces of their story. I didn't know to this level of detail, obviously. And I think just the pure feat of creating a story, collecting all of this information, having these interviews with the men that were actually part of Easy Company, and it's their words specifically through so much of this book, is just, I think, one of the most valuable things we can do to preserve history is to write books like this. This book objectively is absolutely incredible. I think I did struggle a little bit with it just because there's so much detail. There's such a heavy level of detail in this, which is great, but I do struggle to retain that level of detail in any way that makes sense to me, so I have a really hard time visualizing that unless it's connected to a character. And while obviously the men of Easy Company are included in the book and speaking through their own words and are very much larger than life in a lot of respects through the story, it is harder for me to retain that much detail with historical nonfiction, which is why I am super excited now that I've read the book to watch the TV show, because I think having the story told to me in multiple mediums, I think is just going to elevate my experience with it and just make it even more incredible and more memorable even than this was, because this is something that I will definitely not forget reading. This was a book that my grandfather really loved. He loved the story, he loved the show, and I had never read it, so in that way, I'm just thrilled that this was my prompt. And I do also appreciate that it required me to kind of slow down a little bit and just really take in the lives of these soldiers. Dick Winters is such an incredible person. Throughout this entire book, he was the one that stood out to me the most. There were so many, Webster, Malarkey, like there's Shifty, there's so many. I could just sit here and just rattle off a list of names right now, but there's so many men in this story who were just incredible to read about, but I think the through line through it all for them and for us as readers is Dick Winters as their commander. This is an incredible book. If anybody who is watching this is interested in military history that hasn't read this yet, I don't know why you haven't. I don't know why I hadn't, but I definitely think you should. I think that there is a good balance of detail of exactly what happened, where they were, what they did, how they moved, what like ammunition they went through. Like, there's so much detail in here. But I also think it's just a really powerful story of some men who did some incredible things during World War II. And yeah, I'm happy to have read it, and I will admit that though it is an analytical 5-star, this is also a 5-star read. So this is our second 5-star read of this project, which is pretty phenomenal, and let's just see how long we can keep that going. And we are back to pick our next prompt of this project, and I'm very excited because that last one took a while. It was a great read, but it took a while. So I've been eagerly anticipating the next prompt. So I feel like I can't complain. That's the hard part. Because I've had 2 5-star reads in a row from this project, which is ridiculous, especially with how few 5-star reads I've had in this last 6 months. I can't complain. And it was a great read. Band of Brothers was a fantastic read. I'm still scared of these prompts, okay? I'm just gonna throw it all out there and admit it. I'm terrified of the rest of these prompts. And there are still 4 left. I think we're gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. I have no idea what the next prompt is. And I've drawn, as I've been told, 2 Casey prompts so far and none from Leah, which, if this is a Casey prompt, the universe may be conspiring against me. I have no idea. I have no idea. Do I want to read this? I don't know if I want to read this. I'm terrified. Okay, we're gonna read this. You guys, this has to be a Casey prompt. There's no way. Read a book with a character on the cover who is in mid-weapon strike. These are so specific, you guys. Like, I'm shocked at how specific these prompts are. Okay, let me look at my shelves and see what we have. Right, so I have a lot of books on my shelves where the character is carrying a weapon. Far fewer where there's like a mid-strike, which I was actually kind of surprised about because it's fantasy, but it is what it is. So here are our options. We have The Black Wolves by Kate Elliott, which I don't know if this is a standalone actually. No, it's not. It's book 1 of a trilogy. And I actually don't know that much about this. I know that there's an exiled war veteran that is brought back into leadership, like military leadership of some kind. I don't know how I feel about that though. I was honestly kind of hoping for a shorter book in this prompt, but here we are. I also have The Waking Fire by Anthony Ryan, which I have been really excited to read, and honestly, I'm counting it because we have a dragon that is just about to blast some fire at somebody, and I would argue that the dragon is a character, so that counts. I've been really intrigued by this series. The only thing that's stopping me with this one, honestly, is the fact that it is chonk. And that's fine. I just was kind of hoping for something a little bit lighter and quicker for this prompt, which at this point I should know better. So this is a high possibility. The last one that I have, which honestly probably exemplifies the prompt the best, is the second book of the Hanover Chronicles, which is Howard Andrew Jones's The City of Marble and Blood. This continues the part rescue, part revenge story of Hanover, who is going throughout the kingdoms of his conquerors to regather the people from his homeland that have been scattered after the war that they lost. And this one is actually on my priority reads for 2026, which is why it is very, very likely a candidate for me to pick. I don't know that I want to read more fantasy right now. I desperately want to read something not military and not fantasy. So I went back over my shelves again because I was just feeling like it was going to be a little bit too heavy to go right back into another military epic fantasy. And I realized that I have this. This is the Kickstarter edition of The Thousand Li, the first step, which is, I believe, a cultivation fantasy. Now I know that there's progression, cultivation, lit RPG, etc. There's a lot of different types of that kind of storytelling. Pretty sure this is cultivation. I'm not 100% sure on the differences. Ask Andrew's Wizardly Reads if you need to know. But this one I think is gonna be a little bit lighter, a little bit more just fun and entertaining. And the book is absolutely beautiful. And as soon as I saw it and I was like, wait a second, I need to look at that character. He's in mid-weapon strike, and this is a beautiful book, and it's going to be a lot easier to read, and I feel like it is exactly what my brain needs after such a heavy, detailed military book like Band of Brothers, and such an emotionally heavy book like Son of the Shadows, and all of the epic fantasy that I've been reading in the last couple of months. So I think we're going to read The Thousand Li by Tao Wang, and I'm suddenly really excited about it. I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be something a little bit different than I usually read, and I'm here for it. And this book is just absolutely stunning. This was a Kickstarter prototype for the Kickstarter that he ran on this. I think you can still get this on MERRICK Books website, which I will try and remember to link down in the description. But yeah, I think we're gonna do it. It is so hot outside, you guys. We just got back from blueberry picking and shopping, and I have suntan lotion in my hair, and I'm gross. However, I am here to tell you about my experience reading First Li by Tao Wang so far. I am a little over halfway through. Here's my bookmark. After reading 2 pretty heavy 5-star reads, I honestly wasn't sure where this was gonna hit for me within my reading brain space. And in some ways it's been really good. It's been really good to have something that's a little bit on the lighter side when it comes to prose. It's very sequential in terms of the cultivation style of story structure. And I've actually been enjoying that lighter side of it a lot, because sometimes you want to read a steak, right? And sometimes you want to read chicken nuggets. And this is kind of one of those chicken nugget reads a little bit, very entertainment based. There's a lot going on here that I think is really cool. It's very clear that Tao Wang has thought through the cultivation magic a lot. The way that he's explaining it, the way that the magic system is detailed is very well thought out, and it's very intentional. Some of the character stuff feels just, I don't know, young. The main character is 16, which does not bother me on its own, but there's a lot of the schoolyard bully trope in here, and not just with the other young cultivators, but also some of the older characters, so it kind of just feels annoying after a while, where everybody's picking on our protagonist because he's the protagonist, and because he's a peasant, and because. So after a while, it's just like, and that person's gonna be a bully. Okay, cool. For no reason, cool. So that part has been not my favorite, if I'm being honest. And I actually got to a couple of points during this where I wasn't 100% sure that this was where my brain was at and if I wanted to continue. But I did want to try and finish all of the books for this challenge, and I'm not disliking it. Like, I'm not actively disliking it. There are some things that I don't love about it. Some of the suggestion about how this magic system allows specifically the women. We haven't really talked about the men in the same way, but specifically the women who are cultivators are able to reach really high levels of what's called body cleansing, which allows them a sort of immortality, youthfulness, and beauty that they wouldn't have had before. And some of the language around that has not been my favorite. Like, you know, as you get farther along in your magic, you become the truest version of yourself and you become flawless and perfect. And I just, that's not really, to me, something to aspire to as a woman, is just like ultimate beauty and flawlessness. I think that's very reductive and shallow, personally. This is definitely not the type of read that is going to reach the level that Band of Brothers and Son of Shadows did, but I don't think that it has to be that, and I am appreciating the brain break that this is giving me and just following along with the story. The magic system is kind of the highlight, I think, of this. It does get a little info dumpy, and honestly, cultivation, progression, lit RPG, all of the categories, I really struggle with them. I don't usually love the very like A, B, C, D, move along the alphabet type of growth model for fantasy characters. It's not going to be a 5-star read, guys. I'm sorry. We're going to break our streak, but 2 out of 3, I can handle that. And I'm going to go drink some ice water, and I'm going to come back when I have finished the book, and I'll let you guys know what I thought of it. Run out and do some errands today, but not before I choose my next prompt and figure out what we're reading next. There has been some crazy variety so far, and I'm hoping that continues because I've been really liking that. And honestly, 2 out of 3 books being 5 stars is a pretty darn good first half. So let's see if we can keep that going, because I would absolutely love to get through this vlog with like 3 or 4 or 5-star books. I think that's a lofty goal, but we can always dream. It has to be a Leah prompt this time because that's all that's left. Casey dominated the first half of this, and now we have 3 Leah prompts for the rest. Okay. Read a middle grade or young adult fantasy book based on mythology or folklore. I don't have a ton of those, if I have any. She said there was one hard prompt in here, and I made the joke that with my luck, that'll probably be the one that I draw first. And I'm not sure that this one's it, but I kind of feel like it might be. So let's go look at my shelves and figure out what I have. Okay guys, I actually had several on my shelves, which I was excited about, and one of them I've been waiting to read for ages, and the other one I actually have already started reading and should probably finish. So the first one is Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. This one is a middle grade folktale inspired story. And I read a little bit of it for a Read It or Unhaul It challenge, I think last year, and really enjoyed it. And I just put it back on the shelf and never finished reading it. And the other one has been on my TBR for ages. I think I bought this 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been wanting to read it really badly and just haven't gotten to it yet. But that is 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. And this one is one of my favorite covers. Hello, Novia. This is one of my favorite covers, and I love it so much, and I really have been wanting to read this book, and I just haven't gotten to it. So as much as I should do the responsible thing, and I should finish the book that I've already started, I think I'm going to go with 6 Crimson Cranes because this is so long overdue for me to read, and I'm really excited about this one because I love the fairy tale that this is based on, with the sister saving her brothers who get turned into swans, her siblings that get turned into swans, and that was obviously also the inspiration for Daughter of the Forest, which is one of my favorite fantasy novels of all time. So very excited to read this, and here's hoping for another 5-star read. Okay guys, I finished 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. 4th prompt done out of 6. This was a really solid YA. There were some things about the story structure that I think as an adult reader just didn't land with me quite as well as I was hoping to in terms of plot convenience, especially towards the end. There were some things that felt like they were just kind of thrown into the story a little bit out of nowhere and didn't really build on what had already been set up. There were some reveals and things that I wasn't a big fan of. However, there were also some reveals that I really, really liked. The story did not go the way that I anticipated it going, and there were some reveals that happened toward the like 2/3 mark of the story that I actually was really hooked by and really interested in just because it subverted my expectations. And I love that. I always love when authors are able to take a familiar folklore fairy tale mythology and do something a little bit surprising with it. Her writing is very approachable. It's very bingeable. It's very straightforward but pretty is how I would describe it. And yeah, it read pretty quickly. I just slowed down like crazy because it's been so busy this last month. Honestly, I have been driving my kiddos all over the place for activities, and it feels like I have barely had time to sit down and open the cover of a book for the last week and a half to 2 weeks. But I finally finished this, and I'm really glad I read it. This has been on my TBR for so long. This definitely had some of that sibling bond element that I always really love in stories. The romantic subplot is pretty subtle, very, very subtle, which I liked. This is, I have to say too, this is probably one of my favorite book covers that I own. I think it's absolutely stunning. And yeah, it's been a while since I've read a YA, and this one is just a super solid story. I'm actually really excited that I've read it now because I'll be able to share it with my daughters at some point, and I think they're really going to enjoy that. So, 6 Crimson Cranes is officially checked off of the TBR bucket list, and this one will be staying with me. So far, I haven't had a book that I've read in this vlog that I'm like, yeah, I could unhaul that, which I feel pretty good about. I'd say Thousand Lee was probably the closest, but I love the addition of that one so much, and it's fine. It's just not my particular style of story, so I'm still gonna keep the special edition of it, and it might be something that my son enjoys at some point. I don't know, we'll see. I only have 2 prompts left, and both of them are from Leah, because we had that crazy draw all 3 Casey prompts first. What are the odds, you guys? Honestly, what are the odds? So between these 2, again, I have no idea what these are. Second to last prompt, you guys. Okay. Read a book from a female author you've read before. Ooh, okay. Oh my gosh, you guys. Okay, I think I know what I'm gonna read. So I had some options, and I honestly am really excited about reading all of these, so picking one, it's fine. I thought about The Goodbye Cat by Hiro Arakawa, who is the author of the Traveling Cat Chronicles, which I absolutely loved last year, and it's a nice short little translated work. I also have Peony in Love by Lisa C., which is one of the few books of hers in the historical fiction genre that I have not read yet, and her books also read quite quickly. However, it occurred to me as I was looking at my shelves that Nightborn by C.S. Friedman would count for this prompt, because this is the prequel to her Cold Fire trilogy. And I've been really, really wanting to read this. So the question becomes, am I burned out on fantasy? Because I have been reading a ton of fantasy recently, and I will say there is a part of me that does kind of want to jump into a different genre just for my brain's sake, but I really want to read this. I think we're going to go with Nightborn by C.S. Friedman, which makes me really excited. And there's so many options, you guys. As I'm looking at my shelves, there's so many options I could have picked from, but this is one that I really wanted to get to in July or August, so I think we're gonna go with Nightborn by C.S. Friedman. I'm super excited about it. I devoured this. I absolutely devoured this book. I read it in 2 days. This is a 4.5 rounded to 5-star read, which means that from the Goodreads scale of things, we have now had 3 5-star reads in this vlog out of 5 books, which is crazy. So this is a prequel to C.S. Friedman's Cold Fire trilogy, which I am a massive fan of. And I had such a good time with this. I will say, some prequels I feel like you can recommend to read prior to a trilogy or series. This one, you definitely could read it prior to the trilogy. I personally found that having read the trilogy already, this just felt, it had a different weight to it, if that makes sense. I loved this. It is a first contact sci-fi horror story with just a tiny flavoring of fantasy, and it takes place hundreds of years before the trilogy begins. And one of the brilliant things that C.S. Friedman does in this is, in the trilogy, epic fantasy is kind of the front center genre with the blend of horror and sci-fi backing it up. She does a complete genre shift in this, where the sci-fi takes front center with the horror and the fantasy backing it up. The horror probably taking a little bit more of a front center stage with it than the fantasy does. And what's so brilliant about that is that was a amazingly subtle way to show the change in the characters and the culture, characters meaning like over generations, between the prequel and the trilogy. Absolutely brilliant. I loved it. I want to read more things by C.S. Friedman after reading everything she has written so far in the world of Coldfire, because what a incredible feat of storytelling in the SFF genre. I absolutely loved this, and I'm really glad that I was able to get to this through these prompts, because I knew I wanted to read it pretty soon after the Coldfire trilogy, just so everything was fresh in my mind. I have really been loving dipping my toes further into sci-fi this last year and a half or so, and this was everything I wanted out of a first contact story. It is incredibly character driven, which is a hallmark of C.S. Friedman's writing. And it's so interesting, and the world is fascinating, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say about it for now, because I want everyone, if you haven't yet, please put this on your TBR, this trilogy, this book, C.S. Friedman as an author. I'm really looking forward to digging into more of her work in the future, because I could not love this series more. Which means that, you guys, we are down to the final prompt in this jar, and again, no idea what this is going to be. Let's find out what our final read of the Besties Take Over My TBR Challenge, or whatever I'm going to call it. All right, final prompt. Read a book published between 1900 and 1950 that is under 300 pages long. Between 1900 and 1950 that is under 300 pages long. Well, that's going to be a classic, most likely, because I don't have any SFF that's written prior to 1950, as far as I know. You know what? I'm going to have to do a little looking around, and I'll get back to you about that. Okay, so I have a stack here. The first option we have is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. The thing about this one is I do want to read more Virginia Woolf. I want to read this one. I want to read Mrs. Dalloway. And also, I don't know if I'm ready for the density of Virginia Woolf right now. I'm trying to decide if I'm in the mood for that. I also have two John Steinbecks that I've been wanting to get to, one of which, of course, is his famous Of Mice and Men, which is tiny, and also Cannery Row, which I've had for ages and really should have read by this point. The other two that I am considering, I have this collection of Poirot mysteries, Murder in Mesopotamia, Death on the Nile, and Appointment with Death. I could read one of these because they're all under 300 pages, and all of these are written between 1900 and 1950. And I could go Western. I have Under the Tonto Rim by Zane Grey, and this is one of my grandfather's favorite Westerns, so I'm trying to decide of all of these things what I'm in the mood for, and I have no idea. I think I'm gonna pull Virginia Woolf, because I just don't think I have the mental space for that at the moment. So I'm gonna put that back. I think I'm gonna save the Western for a vlog where I'm gonna read some of my grandfather's favorite books. So I'm gonna pull that out, which leaves me with either a mystery or some classic literary fiction with Cannery Row or Of Mice and Men. Genuinely interested in reading all three of them. So I'm gonna think about it for a few minutes and I'll get back to you. Well, so I didn't tell you guys what I picked and I read the whole book, so sorry about that. I realized as I was finishing this, I don't actually think I went back and did my official clip for what I picked for this last prompt. So, you know what? It's fine. Everything's fine. We're just rolling with the ADHD on this channel. I did end up going with Cannery Row by John Steinbeck, which I have now finished. And this was my last book of this vlog, which feels crazy because I've been working on this for well over a month now. And, this was probably, I wouldn't say it was my least favorite reading experience of the 6 that I've done. I would say it's probably somewhere on par with Thousand Lee in terms of, like, they both had things that I liked about them, but overall they were not books that I can see myself returning to or really loving. This, how to describe this book? This has a very similar vibe to something like Ray Bradbury's Dandelion Wine, or even ever so slightly on a more adult level, obviously, The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. And it's dealing with a lot of really grounded themes. But I didn't love it. I didn't love this book, you guys. I felt like Steinbeck was trying too hard with the caricatures and the did you get it themes. And in the end, I didn't particularly like any of these characters. Even the character in the book who is supposed to be the, like, sort of quote-unquote hero of the story of sorts. I don't really know if hero is an applicable word here, but I didn't love it. It had nothing to do with the setting. It had nothing to do with the circumstances of these characters to some degree. There's a little caveat with that. But it was one of those books that I felt like was trying to hammer home a moral lesson and be a little bit edgelord on the side, like the classic version of edgelord. I didn't love this. I didn't love it at all. I gave it, I think, 2.5 stars or something like that. But I will say that I'm glad that I've read it now because it has been on my TBR for quite a long time. It does make me a little nervous to read more Steinbeck, I will say. I know that this one isn't considered like one of his best books, and I still want to try Of Mice and Men. Other than that, I don't know. I think I have The Red Pony also. But I will not lie, reading this made me a little bit more hesitant to read more Steinbeck. I don't know that I'll be returning to his work anytime soon, but I have read it. It was on my list. I can check it off of my classics bucket list now. Alright guys, so I have my completed stack of reads from this vlog, and what a stack, honestly. We had Son of the Shadows by Juliette Merlier. We had Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose. We had The Thousand Lee, First Step by Tao Wong. We had Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. We had Nightborn, Cold Fire Rising by C.S. Friedman. And we had Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. And out of this stack, I had 1, 2, 3 5-star or rounded up to 5-star reads, 1 4-star read, and 2 3-star reads, which I feel like is a pretty darn good showing for 6 prompts. The fact that I had 3 books that were 4.5 to 5-star reads just makes me so happy. That's what I wanted out of this vlog. I was really hoping that I was gonna have some good 5-star reads, that I was gonna have some really awesome reading experiences, and I did. So I want to say a massive thank you to Casey and Leah for picking all these prompts for me, for getting me to read this stack of books, and for bringing me some 5-star reads and some books that have been on my TBR for way too long that I've finally gotten to. I mean, good heavens, it took me 2 years to continue the Seven Waters series. And Band of Brothers I've been meaning to read forever. I've had Six Crimson Cranes for at least 2 or 3 years. Cannery Row for at least 2 years. It's a good stack of books. So I want to know, from you guys' perspective, are there any of these books that are now on your TBR, or what prompts you would have chosen if you were giving me prompts to read books, because you never know. I might do a thing where I open it up to you guys at some point to submit prompts, and then maybe I'll let Casey and Leah pick which ones I do. But anyways, thanks so much for coming along with me through this vlog. It was a blast, and I'm so glad that I did this. That was the perfect amount of guidelines for my reading this last month, and I had a blast with all of these books. So I hope you guys are having a phenomenal week. I hope you are reading some 5-star reads, and I'll see you in the next video.